Okay.
So
Just say we're live and then I'll start mine.
Alright, we are live on my end. S-Man is going to start his, and then we'll start talking about our topic.
Okay. We are live. How's everyone doing today? So I'm joined with 64 Beastie Man, Loudmouth, Jocelyn Man, and HUMANe. We're going to be talking about whether or not taxation is theft. This is a topic that a lot of people do argue about whether or not it is or isn't. I, from personal experience, have had to argue with people on the topic. I used to strongly believe that taxation was theft, just for my position. Now I've realized that I get where the arguments come from on both sides. One saying it's theft, that if you don't do it, they'll send you a note saying you got to pay your taxes. If you don't, they're going to, and this is usually when the ANCAPs say, and I'm quoting verbatim, you'll be kidnapped and thrown in a prison. And on the and others would just say they'll just arrest you. HUMANe here, I'm going to assume because I'm oppressive that he's against taxation. I don't know about Jocelyn Man or Beastie Man or Loudmouth what their positions are. So if you guys want to see your positions, the time's yours.
I'll say that on the statement of whether taxation is theft, the answer is yes, it is. The question is, does the benefits of that theft for society, outweigh any moral concerns of that? Is it a necessary evil? And I would argue that for certain aspects of society, it is a necessary evil.
Yeah, that's my position too.
You all right, Jocelyn?
Yeah, that's my position too, that it's a necessary evil, and then it is theft.
All right, so I'm of the position that I can get where they come from on the argument that it's theft, but I think Loudmouth summed it up just perfectly. So Beastie Man, you go ahead. Do you think taxation is theft?
I know, I always do.
I think it's necessary. I don't necessarily consider it evil because you're helping for a cause to America by paying your taxes to the government.
All right. So HUMANe, I'm gonna ask you why you actually you go ahead.
Yeah, I think we might need to go over our definitions here, because I think that is the main problem we're running into, or at least what I'm seeing right away. Okay, so on my stream I've got my live chat, and I'm gonna link to the sources I have, and these are just regular dictionary definitions. This is not anything like crazy or anything like that. So I'm gonna link to my sources did not want to. There it goes.
Thanks.
All right.
Or I'll go to your stream.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna. This is just. You can just go up to any Google and just look up the definition of tax. So I got taxes, theft, and stealing. Those are the pages I've got pulled up right now. Okay. So taxes is a charge usually of money imposed by authority or persons for or property for public purposes. Okay. And then for B, they've got a sum levied on members of an organization to defray expenses. All right. The next definition doesn't apply at all to what we're talking about here. All right. So theft, the act of stealing, specifically, the felonious taking and removing of personal property with intent to deprive the rightful owner of it. Definition B of one, an unlawful taking as by embezzlement or burglary of property. The other definitions, I believe, do not apply to our purposes here. All right.
Okay.
So it says the act of stealing. So I also brought up the definition of steal. Right? So steal is to take the property of another or others without permission or right, especially secretly or by force. Definition 2, to appropriate ideas, credit, words, etc. without right or acknowledgement. And number 3, to take, get, or win insidiously, surreptitiously, subtly, or by chance. That last one is that would be kind of stretching the definition of steal to apply that last one, but I know the 1 and 2 is definitely what I'm seeing at play here. At least when it comes to taxation. And so I know so it seemed like most people were in agreement that it was theft, although S-Man, you were saying that you disagreed that it was theft, or that
What I said was I get where they're coming from on
Yeah.
the argument that it's theft. I can see why they come to that. There's like you said, there's several definitions of taxation. There's
well,
from vocabulary.com. There's from Merriam-Webster, just the Google definition.
yeah.
Wikipedia, Investopedia. There's and
Yeah,
business.
there's a bunch of different definitions you could use, but those were the definitions I was looking at, and that's why I'm kind of I'm not understanding why you guys are saying it's a necessary evil when you're talking about taking someone's property by force, and it's the question is, if it's for good, why do you need to force someone to give it up? If it's something that everybody needs and everybody can use, and it's something that's of a benefit to someone, why do you need to use force to take it? Why does it need to be done without their permission? Or why does it... And this is a weird instance of taxation, is yes, there is a bit of your permission involved, but it's the same amount of permission you would give to a mugger, right? Or at least this is the example that's often brought up by ANCAPs, is if somebody came up to you in the street, pointed a gun at your face, and said, "Give me all of your money," would that be right? And most people would say no. The other question, so the follow-up question is, if I give that person a badge and they go up to you, point a gun at your face, and say, "Give me your money," does that make it right? Because that's essentially what is going on here with IRS agents, is there's the implicit understanding that if you say, "No, I'm not going to pay," there are consequences, in the same manner that a mugger, pointing a weapon at you or saying, "Hey, give me all your money," you understand there's the implicit consequences of not abiding by, if you don't, they're going to shoot you. Does that mean that they had permission, that you gave them your stuff? And it's like, "Hey, I just pointed a gun at him, but he did this of his own accord."
Well, I think the answer to that, though, is if people benefit from a service but can opt out of it, okay, that encourages freeloaders on the system, basically.
Wait.
Some level of coercion of payments.
Okay,
is
you
not
mean
necessary to prevent people from freeloading from the system, whereas if people were contributing to it entirely voluntary, people who were not contributing to it likely could still benefit from that system if that wasn't the case.
Okay, I got you. So people could take out without paying in. That's
Yes.
that's
I hear what's going on. I think it's on HUMANE's end.
not sure how it's on my end.
Does someone have headphones on?
Let me check if it's me.
I can't even tell. Okay, yeah, it's probably from you. Do you have headphones on, Jocelyn, man, or are you just using... I don't know. Okay, as you said,
Yeah. Well, you just mute yourself when you're not talking. That'll help eliminate some of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that is assuming that, it's making two assumptions, right? The first is that everybody gets access to whatever, to the benefits of taxation, right? It's like everybody benefits from whatever taxes go to pay for, and some people are going to get the benefits without paying into the system.
Right, like
that happens right now. So,
like having a police force arresting criminals, for example, that prevents someone from mugging me on the street or shooting me in the head, or what have you. All right, everyone has to pay for that police force that keeps the scum off the street. All right, but whereas if people could opt out of taxation, people would benefit from not having these criminals on the street. But they wouldn't be contributing to it.
That already happens. There's already people benefiting from the system without paying into the system. That's how it's set up right now. There's
Sure,
actually
Sure, that is, and I've been critical of that.
yeah. So not only do you have people who are in the country illegally who benefit from our school systems, who benefit from often from welfare programs, who benefit from hospitals, fire departments, police, and all that sort of thing, without paying into the system because they don't have tax IDs. But there's also people whose income is low enough where they either don't get charged any taxes at all, or they actually get paid by the government for whatever reason, because there's enough tax credits so that way, even if they didn't pay any taxes, they get a refund back. So there are people who get paid through the taxation system currently, so they get the double benefit. So not only do they get money back from other people's taxes because of tax refunds, but they also get all of the benefits that everybody else gets in taxation.
Going back to what you said about the immigrants, I would. The simple solution is if they're illegal, deport them.
Yeah.
That's where I stand on that.
Well, that is one of my criticisms with taxation as it is because there is that going on. There's people benefiting from the system without contributing to it. So those are people that are leeching off of me right now, or leeching off of other people who pay more than they get back.
How about this? For those that are leeching off the system, if they're shown they don't truly need it, like they could survive without it, then they'd be cut off.
Well, taxes go to pay for things like roads, infrastructure, the military, and all that sort of thing. There's no way to deny somebody that sort of thing.
So
right?
Having a military is another big thing. Not having North Korea invade you and enslave you also is a net benefit to you that you should naturally contribute.
But like you were saying, it's a benefit to those people who aren't paying into the system. Even in our current system, there's people who aren't paying into it, but they're getting all those benefits. So that to me is a problem.
If we get rid of taxes, then is there any? How exactly would the system work without taxes?
Well,
how exactly would you pull it off?
So then we get into the voluntary section, which I don't think we got into. I did say that there was two things that are being overlooked when Loudmouth was saying. What was the other thing that he was saying?
He said the police and the military, but when it came to taxes, which I thought he was going to bring up the fire department.
So there's a second part of the problem with taxation, at least the way it's implemented, and I don't think there's any way to get around it. So I don't think there's any way to get around from people benefiting from a system they don't pay into. I don't think there's any way to get around that. As long as it's something that is for a group, I don't think you can ever get away from that. Taxation or without taxation, that seems to be a problem for both systems. Whether it's voluntary or whether it is implemented, there's no way to avoid people getting more of a benefit from the system than they put in. The second part is people don't get to choose which portions they pay for. Right? So, like you sounded like you were in favor of the military, and I'm in favor of paying for a military and paying for police forces. But I'm not in favor of giving money to Africa. I'm not in favor of giving money to Israel. Yeah.
Like I said,
but,
I'm a libertarian.
Yeah. But your tax dollars go to those efforts. So it's an instance where...
Hello.
Hey, Aspie,
hello.
how's it going?
Hey, Aspie.
Not much. I would just like this. I'm good. I would just like to say Logan Paul did nothing wrong.
Yeah,
Aspie, we'll debate that another time.
That's irrelevant to this conversation. It's a little more topical than tonight's theme, but I'm in agreement.
I'm joking. I was only joking.
Oh, you were joking, but not. I'm serious. I don't think he did anything wrong, but that's just me. Because I'm just the weird sociopath, apparently, though.
Themselves, you'd like go up to them and be like, "Hey, let's say like Weekend at Bernie's."
Aspie, I got a question for you. Do you believe taxation is theft?
I'm libertarian, but I'm also really moderate on this. While at one point I do think that the government taking your money by basically coercion is kind of theft, but at the same time I'm also of the idea that in order for it to properly run, that the government does need revenue, and that to a degree the government does and that it's basically like this, that the government is maintaining the stability of a nation, therefore money is also needed. So yes, taxation, I do think it is required to a degree, but to call it theft is, on principle, it could be considered that to a degree, but I don't think it's theft in the same way as somebody coming into your house and stealing your iPad, or going into your safe and taking your money. It's a very, I don't think it's theft by that sense.
So, okay, let's paint a scenario. So what if somebody broke into your house, stole your money, and then came back the next day and gave you a sack of dog shit on or flaming dog shit on your front porch, but also a really nice present like a new iPad or something that you had been looking forward to getting? They spent their money on those two things. Does that make them breaking in and taking your money to purchase a bag of dog shit and the iPad you wanted? Does that make it a good thing or a necessary thing?
Well, you'd have to point out which is the dog shit, which is the iPad.
Oh, well, no, I mean, that's pretty obvious which one is the flaming bag of dog crap and which one is the iPad, but...
Well, I don't... Well, the
I
problem
think,
with these...
what was it? Thomas Sowell actually had a very good line that said that if a federal agency had two functions, one was feeding children and the other was building statues of Benedict Arnold, if you tried to cut that agency's funding, they would cut the feeding children part, and they would not cut the
This is something that we notice with the government as a whole. Whenever there's a government shutdown, it's never the don't pay congressman. It's never the my assistant is going to have to go without. It's always the we're going to defund our military and we're going to defund all our national parks and all the things that people want. It's never the we're gonna limit foreign aid. It's no, we're gonna pay the congressman's salary and we're gonna pay all these other rich people and all the expensive unnecessary things. We're gonna cut funding from the things that people want.
Well, here's the thing.
I gotta say this though. Well, about the government shutdowns. Well, when Obama was in 2013 had to deal with the government shutdown, one of the most bizarre things he did there was he put up all these fencing around the certain national monuments.
Yeah.
All right. Not having fencing there, right? Just leaving them as is.
Yeah, it doesn't cost anything.
Okay, he just did that to be mean-spirited about it. Okay, the funding, or I'll keep these fences here.
No, it was a publicity stunt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if we don't pay for the government, this is what's going to happen. It's like.
I remember at the time I was debating people who were hardcore Obama supporters, like, well, the Republicans helped shut down the government. They're to blame for this. I'm like, even if that's true, even if I grant you that premise, does that relate to these fences being put up?
No.
Monuments doesn't magically put a fence around.
I do got a question for you, HUMANE.
Mm-hmm.
So usually, when I speak to like libertarians and conservatives, it's like, and Republicans are in favor of like minimal government, minimal like lower taxes. So when it comes to the tax cut that President Trump signed into law, do you think it went far enough, or do you think it has not gone far enough? Like in your opinion, since you think taxation is theft.
Yeah, in the sense that taxation is theft, it did not go far enough, because going far enough would be eliminating it altogether, right? That's
God.
Yeah, going far enough would be just like, okay, no more taxes. That's
well, you're an evil fucking genius.
Yeah. So what I would propose as a bit of a compromise between the two is more of an a la carte system where, okay, this is how much I have to pay in taxes, but being able to specify which programs you want it to go to. So let's say that my taxes are $5,000, and so I'm like, okay, well, 1,000 of that goes to the military funding, let's, another 1,000 of that goes towards, actual government infrastructure, things that we need. Another 1,000 goes for like CIA, FBI, and law enforcement and things like that. I'm not really sure what else the government actually would. So as far as we're talking about the federal level and things that, really. So that would be the FBI, the CIA, military, and then just the general management and all that sort of thing. So whatever, I split the five. Let's round it up to 6,000. So each of those organizations gets 2,000. That to me would make more sense. But what doesn't get funded is the Planned Parenthood. What doesn't get funded is the post office. What doesn't get funded is the education system. What doesn't get funded is welfare system. What doesn't get funded is Social Security. What doesn't get funded is all these other extra things that I don't think a government should, like, even from a minarchist perspective, the government shouldn't be involved in. And from an anarcho-capitalist perspective, things that should be allowed to live or die on their own, right? I think military and law enforcement and the judicial system and all that stuff could sustain itself voluntarily without a government supporting it. But we're talking about a taxation compromise here, so that's assuming there is a government body to fund. But a system like this, you'd still be paying taxes, so that is kind of a bummer. But all the programs that don't get enough funding to run, well, then they don't get enough funding to run and they get shut down. Congress doesn't need to budget anything. Their budget is set by the people, because the people said, oh, this is how much I want to put here, this is how much I want to put there, this is how much I want to put there. Don't fund all this other crap. You will see these programs just disappear because the taxpayers have said they don't want to fund it. So if only $100 goes to the Postal Service, well, the Postal Service can run on whatever $100 buys. If that's not enough to keep it up and running, shut it down, sell it off. That's
Privatizing.
Yeah, to me that makes a lot more sense than our current system.
I don't mind privatizing the mail, to be honest with you.
The mail's already a lot privatized. FedEx, UPS, I mean, they run more successfully than the post office does.
Yeah, the post office loses money. Like, if you look at their track record, it is abysmal. Now they keep trying to say, oh no, we make money and all this sort of thing. It's like, no, you stay in business because we keep dumping taxpayer dollars into you.
Not because of people picking up mail or nothing like that. Because of the shipping.
Yeah, everybody just uses UPS now and FedEx. All these private companies have basically made the post office impractical.
Well, yeah, well,
if we get rid of the, like, and people complain, oh, if they lose, like, they'll point out how in some cases UPS or FedEx might lose packages. You could easily just switch to another
yeah,
service.
that's like saying the post office doesn't lose packages. What? Post office loses mail too. It's not.
I'm considering whether or not private education should be privatized, whether whether or not the police or the military should be. Like, I've been thinking about that as of recently, but I think I can back, like, privatizing the mail systems. So, and I think everyone can logistically agree that paying as little in taxes as possible is an awesome thing. I would limit what our taxes go to by the bare minimal, what is necessary, like the police, the fire departments,
education,
the military. Well, the military and the police, maybe HUMANE does have a point there that they could be self-sustaining.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just read something hilarious. Breaking topic completely. That Rick Spencer said that Native Americans should be released back into the wild.
Fuck.
What?
Well, did I say he was racist?
What a semi-horrible thought.
Great.
Again, I don't understand how anybody takes him seriously. It's like, oh, he's a threat, we need to shut him down. I'm like, dude, he says stuff like that, and how do you not look at him and laugh? Just, like, like, that sounds like the mindless ramblings of, like, your dementia grandparents or like the crazy person under the bridge, and just like, Who?
Yeah.
Why are people still listening to this guy?
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah,
well,
that's what I told Vadim when he was flipping out over the roaming interview. I just said, this guy's a kook, and everyone knows he's a kook. All right, it's not like roaming making him look good or anything is going to like bring about his dream of a white ethno state.
Yeah. Well,
hey, hey, Lonely Wolf. I don't know if you're still here, but what's your position on the topic of taxation being theft?
Oh, that's because I like kind of what Humane was getting at is like it's almost sounds like it's a very democratic thing of sort of having a say like where your taxes go to. It's like it's not so much. I mean, obviously tax revenue is an essential, but it's like the way it just people just fucking government is so good at wasting money.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, we spend a couple hundred billion on the military. I don't know how much we spend on the police force. I'm gonna look into that. I had a thought running through my head, and then it just vanished. Like, I'm trying to think of what I was gonna say, but yeah. Okay, so if we had all the tax-paying citizens go have a vote, what would we spend our money on? If this program, if over 50% votes no, we're not going to spend our tax dollars on this, that program gets cut completely out, or at the very least is no longer funded by the taxpayers. Or if it's over, or like vice versa. If it's 50% that say yes, that's what happens. If it's 50% that say no, or at least a little over 50%, then it won't get funded. I don't know what everyone's
sorry
thoughts
to
are that way.
interrupt, but my dad right now is watching Trump pornography.
Oh, you need
Wow.
to you need to scold him
No,
on
I'm
that, and then he
no,
he
Sean
needs to come
Hannity.
back and it's like, no, it's Trump pornography statistics.
Well, I guess
joking with them,
statistics-
I
Dad.
love that my joke about Sean Hannity seems to be
One
going
second, please.
viral, at least in our little small sphere.
Hey, Aspie. So I didn't know I didn't know looking at statistics runs in the family.
Yeah.
No, because I reckon the porn now it's probably
Yeah.
Spend on the
Thank you.
police.
Yeah. Well.
rocket, then
Oh.
Expend.
rocket just
Yeah.
I meant to say that he was watching Sean Hannity.
No, he's just watching statistics. We heard him.
Okay. Anyway, okay. So the U.S. apparently spends, according to Forbes.com. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it or trust it, but according to them, we spend collectively $100 billion on policing and a further $80 billion on incarceration. Even though crime levels have dropped substantially over the last 30
Yeah.
years in line with the spending uptake, a report released last month argues that this occurred in spite of higher police budgets. I will link this to Humane in the DMs if he would like to take a look at this himself.
Oh, there's an easy there's an easy way to get rid of all the people who are incarcerated. We just go Chinese style on the death penalty. That's it.
We have 2,000 people on death row.
Everything is the death penalty.
I'm strongly
I
in
know.
favor of
Be like the queen. Put the queen from Alice in Wonderland in power.
Yeah.
Oh, where's his head?
That'd be.
With your head.
Okay, okay, so we might have another person join the stream. He might not. I don't know if he's still here.
Great.
But anyway,
Oh wait, did we get Beastie's take on this, or did he chime in yet?
I
He says
already
in
gave
this-
my take on that.
Okay.
yeah, he said it's a necessary evil.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So the necessary part is.
You didn't say it was a necessary evil, though.
oh, I thought you said
No.
it was, but I mean, I've seen people argue that taxation, like we should tax, like your best friend Humane said that we should increase taxes on the rich and put taxes on the poor because the poor it's to help the impoverished escape poverty, or at least that's kind of what he was getting at. He better fucking join us, because if he's gonna argue that that taxation isn't theft, I want to hear him say why. He says,
Yeah.
taxation is not theft. The only people who believe it's theft are people incapable of understanding the social contract and haven't grown out of their 14-year-old fake intellectual Ayn Rand phase.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Technically, that's not an
So
ad
that
hominem,
is that is argument ad lapidem. So he's gonna have to prove why. Like just saying, "Oh, it's a social construct or a social contract or whatever." Well, why? Like that is not an explanation in and of itself. And to say, and he's just saying, "Oh, it's absurd, and you're like, "But you didn't prove why it's absurd."
Yeah, I'm gonna see if we can get some random geek in here because he calls AMCAPs crybabies over taxation.
Yeah.
So I want to hear his explanation of it.
Yeah, he's got to come out and defend that position. Otherwise, it's a meaningless argument. There has to be sound, logical reasoning behind it, other than just saying, "You guys are just crying about this or that," and that's what seems like he's doing. Now, he did say it's the social contract. What is a social contract, and who determines that, and how do you... Can you opt out of a social contract? Is it something that you're just bound to, and what are your options when dealing with something like a social contract?
He's always leaving the country to find somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is easier said than done, actually.
You have to pay taxes as well.
Yeah, and also people could just easily hide money. Because I mean, if I were a rich businessman and I just said fuck paying taxes, fuck everything.
No, you
about
just
it,
put everything in the Cayman Islands, or what's the other one? What's the tax shelter?
Apparently, Spencer now argued for a monarchy in this country. My God, I feel like I'm in the wrong stream right now. I mean,
Hey, can I say something?
Gold.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I heard a funny thing. I read a funny article that said that it was actually real, that the Southern Poverty Law Center had $69 million hidden overseas.
Wow.
69 million?
Is there a significant number behind that, or the reason behind it? Why it's 69 as opposed to any other non-sexual number?
Ham says he does not have time. He's getting ready for work. Well, all right, fair enough.
Okay.
69. That's
Fair enough.
like when they call that out of bingo. It's like meal for two with a terrible view, 69.
How about this? Like, who's more absurd, Tariq Nasheed or Richard Spencer?
Oh, dude, they're both equally.
I think they're a tie.
Yeah.
I think Black
Tariq
Tariq
Nasheed
up there.
They're
Outdoes
both caricatures
a
of.
little
I don't think either of them is a real person.
Yeah, they seem.
Black-
They
Black
do. They
is worse.
genuinely seem fake.
I think Tariq Nasheed's worse because at least Richard Spencer is somewhat geared into reality. Of Tariq Nasheed, he thinks, "Oh, we all black people created everything," and I'm just like, "No, dude."
But yeah, I think I'm gonna change my answer. I think Tariq is worse because everybody hates Richard Spencer, and very few people hate Tariq Nasheed. At least, like, oh no, he gets a pass. He gets to say all the crazy, stupid, racist crap, and nobody cares. Well, I mean, nobody on the left cares. At least, nobody. There's no mainstream coverage. And yet there's like MSM coverage of Richard Spencer and how he's the worst person ever to exist for...
Yeah, like everybody already knows Richard Spencer's full of shit.
Yeah, I do think that if Zach were to meet Tariq Nasheed, he would be like punched by Tariq because he would say, "Tariq, you need to shut up, eat yourself some fried chicken and watermelon." Because Zach, I think that's the catchphrase. And the stream gets demonetized, and we all get strikes for it. Every single person in this stream gets a strike. If Oprah was in the stream, that's what she would say. She'd be like, "You get a strike, and you get a strike."
And you get
Yeah, we're not big enough for anybody to notice, so we're gonna skate by.
She said everyone would get a free car, and lo and behold, it was by no means free because of taxes on the cars.
Yeah.
I honestly, if the society could function without taxes, then, like, if it could be shown that, yeah, society would run just fine without taxation, then I'd be more than willing to give it a shot. But I would take it in an area where it's, like, as decent or as realistic a population as possible to try and represent the U.S., or at least a chunk of the U.S., and have them try it for a few months and see how it works. If everything works fine, then all right, we abolish taxes altogether. If not, then we would go back to taxing people. But I don't think it'd be a bad idea to have the citizens decide what their tax dollars go to. I'm very much in favor of having the citizens decide what their tax dollars go to. Because if we're going to tax them, I don't think it's asking too much to let the citizens decide as you are taking their money. And ask beyond because you're causing ear rape.
Which is why I think my proposed compromise is slightly better than what you're saying as far as voting on things. Because my proposed compromise is voting with your dollars. You're saying, I want to fund this, I want to fund that, and I want to fund that. But I don't want to fund any of these other things, so they don't get any money from me. But somebody else might jump into that same system and be like, okay, don't fund the military, don't fund, whatever, all these other programs, but give all this money to Planned Parenthood, and I want to give all this money to welfare, and I want to give all this money to this program and to education, but they can do that. They can fund those programs all they want. So that, to me, gives people a little more flexibility, and it makes it more like the free market, because I think if we went with that as opposed to voting, people would be like, oh, I get to pay for what I think I need and want, and other people get to pay for what they think they need and want. And it could be set up in such a way where this is something that would not have been possible when the country was first founded. But now that we've got the internet, we've got rapid communication. This is something that could be done easily within the next year or so. I mean, doesn't take much to build a website at thewhitehouse.org and have it's like, hey, just specify where you want your money to go. This is, I mean, it wouldn't be that difficult to implement. But I think after a few years of people doing the system like this, and, those things that people think are necessary, and they're like, hey, if they're going underfunded, the next year, people are like, okay, last year, not enough people gave to this, I'm going to give more of my money to that sort of thing. People would start giving to those things that are more vital, that got underfunded the previous rounds and stuff like that.
Yeah, Twitter chat
but
is going to be very Kansas. Aspie. Wait, who's that?
Somebody's eating Pop Rocks?
Oh, I thought Aspie was peeing in his fucking sink. I'm like, dude, that's gross.
I don't know what he's
I
doing.
think was running actually.
I don't know why he's doing that. Like, not like visible.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Whoops. Sorry, I was urinating outside. My apologies.
What?
I thought my microphone was off. My apologies.
You guys were caught midstream, weren't you?
Yeah, midstream, on stream.
Oh, we were demonetized.
It's just
Why would we be demonetized? It's not like there was a dead body. That's the only thing that gets demonetized.
Actually, we're gonna do someone in the stream to die, and then we get fucking monetized. So, not it.
Oh, as far as I know, none of my stuff is monetized. It's none of like
we don't have over 10,000 views yet.
I do.
I do.
No,
I do,
don't.
but I'm not monetizing any of my stuff.
Yeah, I stopped bothering with monetization when I was like, oh, I've been on here for over a year and 2 cents? What the fuck?
2 cents a day.
No,
I got
no, 2 cents
$20
total.
in the past month.
How much?
A little over $20.
Oh
Yeah.
man, you can get quite a few Big Macs for $5.
No,
You can
I'm on a diet right now.
you
Oh,
can
the
live
diet.
off of at diet. Why don't you just change your eating habits permanently? That's easier.
I tried a
work
kale
out.
diet for a while, and I lost like 10 fucking pounds, and I'm proud of that because my fat ass tried kale. That shit's fucking gross. if it's like a smoothie, it's fucking gross. Fuck.
And I think you're doing it
Why
wrong.
not just eat it? Why not just eat it like a salad?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm gonna do because I kind of fell off the wagon with that shit. I tried it for like 2 weeks, and by the end, I'm like, I can't take it anymore. When it was like the smoothie kind, and then I'm like, I'm probably not doing this right because my fucking luck. So, all right, Ham is gonna reply to my chat message, which is probably gonna be a bunch of spurginess. So,
Yeah, as usual.
Okay. I mean, like,
But
just-
as long as he's not here, then I don't have to agree with everything he says.
I think imagine if he just comes on stream crying. He's like, "Humane, please, just disagree with me on something in your life. I can't disagree with you, Ham. And
Yeah,
then he
not
starts-
not
he
allowed.
starts-
Yeah, not allowed to disagree with him.
he starts insulting his intelligence, and I'm like, I agree. Oh, imagine! I wonder how far he would take that, though. But yeah, you choose by electing your representatives. He says, once we get the money out of politics, I think that's what he's saying. Since morally and ethically, money is not speech, and one billionaire should not sway an election.
What does that have to do with taxation?
Well, that's what he's saying. I think it has something to do with it. And one billionaire should not sway an election. Then you can elect a representative that'll push for your tax plan. Okay, when it comes to money in politics, I have no problem getting it out. I mean, I don't see the. I mean, if you want to be.
Well, you can't.
Huh?
I don't think you actually can. I don't think you can get money out of politics.
How would that not be possible?
Well,
how would it not be done?
Because right now there is because you need money in order to do a campaign, right?
That's true.
So it's not like campaigns are okay. So if it comes to the situation where everybody gets the same amount of money to run their campaign, like everybody who's running, well, then that opens up the gate to everybody to run, right? Anybody who runs get a certain amount of money, so that way they all get the same. They can spend that money on whatever campaign they want. Well, then you're going to see everybody and their brother just, hey, I'm gonna campaign because, hey, when you're getting that seat, there's a lot of power, right? Any political, when you're talking about at the federal level, so any Congress seat, presidential seat, even Treasury and Secretary and all that sort of thing. Well, I mean, I guess those don't really have campaigns for them, but you would still want some way to get yourself recognized, right, in order to get in that position. So if we did all of that and we're like, okay, we're getting money out of politics and we're just having this flat amount, then you're going to have a bunch of, everybody's just going to join the race on the, just on the off chance that they win. So,
so we set like the limit of how many could run.
Now that I think about it, it's kind of a vague term because it really depends on what you're talking about when you say we want money out of politics.
Yeah, well, there's the other thing is you can't get money out of politics as long as there are favors that politicians can hand out. As long as there is some kind of thing that people can get out of a politician, they're going to put money in to get one politician elected over another. It's as long as they get something in return. It's only if there's nothing that they can gain out of politics that you will get money out of politics. Because if right now they can do it legally, as soon as you make it kind of illegal, well, they'll find ways around the system. Find ways, I mean, this is already kind of in place, where people get gifts and people get taken to nice fancy restaurants or whatever and they eat steak and, the lobbyists take people out to strip clubs and give them cocaine. And I mean, this is kind of like one of those open secrets about Washington, D.C. And there's a lot of things that, I guess the cocaine and hookers and all that stuff would be technically illegal, but taking them to nice restaurants and giving them vacations and flying them to private islands and all that sort of thing, that's perfectly legal right now. So even if we got money out of politics, as in you can't pay to someone's campaign however much you want, you could still, once a politician is in there, you could still influence that politician by giving them favors, by giving them perks, whatever. That's still money in politics.
Okay, hold on a second, let me check that. Okay, Colt Ham says he has Friday night off if y'all want to continue the discussion then with a couple, and then he puts in quotes, statist socialists libtards. I'm fine with having that discussion. He says, which is why then some random geek says, which is why I hate ANCAPs. If I don't know if I can handle doing 2 streams in a row with an ANCAP. Well, you've done, I don't know, 2, maybe 3?
No, he's only done 1 with me, but...
I thought it was 2 with you, because at least what I can remember.
No, it was just from last week.
Oh, yeah. It was the first time we met you and Loudmouth. So, I mean, my position is that as long, like, if one can show reasonably that, and with all factors and all variables factored for, or taking into account that if we get rid of taxation, that everyone will be fine. All right, we can do that. Now, and if they
Well,
can show that,
okay.
I mean,
Everyone will be fine is kind of that's
or
kind of a
or
misnomer,
society will
right?
fall apart.
Yeah, okay. So society would fall apart. Well, we've already got proof that that wouldn't happen because we didn't have taxes before 1913. We did not have a federal income tax prior to
We had a
1913.
Federal tax, but there were still taxes.
Okay, yeah, I get that there were still taxes. There was no federal tax. Where right now, all this sorry, this is probably a bad presumption on my part that we've been talking about taxes at the federal level.
There's the state level.
There's the state level as well, which would also be theft in my book. But we proved that you don't need a federal tax because this country existed, for
There were federal taxes, not an income tax. A lot of it was like on duties.
Yeah, it was tariffs basically. It was imports and exports. That's what taxes were were on those. It wasn't until 1913 that there was an income tax, and I got to check to see when a corporate tax was implemented because that might have been around the same time, but I'm not sure. I think that was around 1913 as well.
Yeah, while you're looking, HUMANE,
Yeah.
If you don't want to, you don't have to. But if you can, would you like to on Friday sit down with some random geek and the cult of ham and cheese sandwich and me and discuss this further? Because I think if that does happen,
I am not available tomorrow.
Okay, so
Okay.
Loudmouth. I don't know about Loudmouth or anyone else though. So
I don't know if I want to go tangle with ham.
Probably
I remember
not.
last time that was fucking funny as hell. Anyway, HUMANE, go ahead.
Okay. It looks like corporate taxes as we know it was implemented in 2000 and wait, no. Never mind. 2000.
Well,
that doesn't make any sense.
Lucifer, what's your position on whether or not taxation is theft?
I don't really have much of an opinion on it, to be honest. It's kind of, I kind of have mixed feelings about it, somewhat.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, 1909.
Okay. So if society was able to function and it didn't fall apart without it, then I mean, we would have to take into account the differences of the time. Like there's been a whole lot of, obviously, like unless someone was blind, there's been a lot of changes in society in the last 109 years. So if they're able to have that type of thing, that like they take into account all the variables of the time differences, and if we try it in a small area and it can work just fine, then I would.
Yeah. So I think that would be the best way to test the theory. Is right. You start in a small area, like one city, one town. Be like, okay, you guys are free to do whatever you want. No federal, no state. You guys are your own little, sheltered tax haven, and see how that works. And if that works pretty well, then you branch out. And okay, now we're going to try county-wide. And if that works out, then you try statewide. And if that works out, then you try several states. I guess you could do this like, hey, it worked in one town. Well, now let's try 10 towns at the same time, and then let's try.
You try a certain junction of the United States, like the Western U.S.
Yeah.
Like Colorado, Utah, and then you branch out.
Yeah.
Because, like you said in your live debate with the British feminist, you said if it can't work on a small scale, you cannot expect it to work on a large scale. I'm paraphrasing, but yeah.
Okay, so there are some things to take in consideration in that if we're talking about a small town within the U.S., that small town would still benefit from the overall military and law enforcement in the surrounding area. So that is something that you have to kind of, as it grows and as these sections get bigger, right, then they are more exposed to what it would be like without relying on that. You'd still have the military and the national defense no matter what, because unless that small city or whatever is outside of military jurisdiction, that it still has that military protection. So in which case you could get to a completely minarchist type society like this, where there's just the court system and there's just the military system. Well, I guess law enforcement, military, and courts. Those are the three basic things that most minarchists say the government has to have. Now, whether there's more stuff on top of it that the government has to provide, that's where you get into all these kinds of debates and stuff like that. But it's only the ANCAPs that are like, oh, nope, you don't even need those three.
Yeah, we did do a discussion a few months back about anarcho-capitalism, but I felt like there's a we only covered, I think we just mainly covered those three: the police, the military, and the courts.
Yeah.
Other than that, we everything else, I'm pretty sure you could just use the same point. Like if we we pay taxes on the fire for fire trucks, the fire department.
Well, see,
the same point would apply to privatizing that, correct?
Yeah, it's the so when we were talking at the start of the stream, everybody was saying it was kind of, well, taxation is theft, but it's kind of necessary. And you're like, okay, so if you didn't have to pay for the police department, would you? Like, I certainly would.
I would not. If they said, hey, we don't need your tax, like, we won't require you to pay taxes on the police, all right, I will, like, officially, like, if they're to say that, all right, I am paying for it. If I have to, I will. But if I don't have to, fuck it, I ain't.
Yeah, no, well, I would, because I actually have stuff worth protecting, and I cannot do it all myself. So I would be like, oh, dude, sign me up for that. I don't care if it's more expensive than what I'm paying right now. As long as all other taxes are eliminated, okay, yeah, I'll pay for the private security. That's essentially what law enforcement would become at that point. And it wouldn't be like my private security detail. It would be the security for my neighborhood or whatever.
Yeah, I guess that does destroy my
necessary evil argument. I think you were the one that said the necessary evil thing, right? I mean, when it comes to private security, I remember I would talk to people like in my own family about it, and they said, well, if they brutalize someone, how can you ensure they don't get away with it? But one could easily counter with, yeah, but our current law enforcement kind of gets away with it.
Yeah, it gets
already.
Yeah, and there's what are your legal recourses when when the police department brutalizes someone? You take them to court, right? That's what we do right now with the government institution of police, right? You can take a private security firm to court as well. So what's the difference here? Like, oh, but they're going to be brutal. I'm like, well, if they're brutal and they step out of lines, you're like, hey, that's not what I paid for. I'm taking them to court. I'm going to sue them for money, and they're going to go out of business. And so new institutions are going to be like, dude, we don't want to be like those guys. So we're going to institute policies, and anybody who's, anybody who even thinks they're going to beat a suspect and get away with it, no, they're out of here. We don't want our business to crumble over some stupid guy abusing his power.
Yeah, and you could rely on the free market, like I've seen AMCAPs point out, and I think it could work, of having more than just one police force. You have several, and if one misbehaves, you stop using you go to another one, and there's real life analogies of it working, the free market working, like in the case of United Airlines incident. The guy got roughed up on the plane, or at the very least he somehow got a bloody nose, and everybody and the dog was.
Yeah. United lost a. Yeah.
I don't know how much they lost, but.
Well,
they lost
you also
quite
gotta.
a bit, and I think it was around.
Yeah, they lost. Yeah.
The thing about the police departments is that there's a level of training that's involved with them, with becoming a police officer. You don't just pay somebody. I mean, a security guard, they're not even given real guns because they're not trained police officers. I mean, they're given. You ever heard the term rubber bullet, man? Well, that's what they are. They give them these guns that have rubber bullets. So if you shoot somebody with a rubber bullet gun, they're not going to die, but they're going to just be very badly injured. They don't give security guards for what I said. And to be a
Well,
police officer, you have to go
that
through a
depends
lot.
on where they're security guards.
Yeah. All right, hang on a second. So in the chat, I asked Ham Sandwich what would happen in his opinion if we abolished taxes, and he says if we abolish taxes, the government will no longer have funding. Well, that's the point, in a sense.
Yeah, that's
One of the two things will happen. The government will become immensely authoritarian and reduce us all to serfs. How will they afford to be able to do that in the first place? Or the government will crumble and we'll have a series of small city-states take over with the most ruthless, eventually taking over a majority of people.
but yeah, the most ruthless amongst us. That's kind of the theory with ANCAP is going to fall apart because when everybody's doing whatever they want, all it's going to take is one person getting power and then taking over everything else.
Except from my understanding, and I've seen a number of ANCAPs explain anarcho-capitalism from how they understand it. Everyone would be armed. There would be no restrictions on weapons. Everyone would be armed.
Well, not only that, is communities would work together. Communities that don't want to be overrun. It becomes so it's sort of like well, I mean, it's not going to be that much different from how things are today. It's not like, cities are rivaled against each other and the only thing stopping them from outright destroying one another in war is the fact that the federal government is stopping them. No, the reason...
I don't know. Have you ever seen a Raiders game? Have you ever seen a Raiders game?
Well, I mean, sometimes people go crazy, but...
Or Eagles game or a Cowboys game. It's just horrible.
But usually, so Auburn and Alabama is a pretty famous college rivalry, and people from Alabama don't like people from Auburn, and people from Auburn don't like people from Alabama, and all that sort of thing. There's all kinds of tension and whatnot. But the idea that if you got rid of the federal government and the state government, that Auburn and Alabama would go into a Hatfield-McCoy type war against each other, that sounds like kindergarten logic to me. That's just like the ridiculous to the absurd, at least from as far as I can tell. Because
hey, are you surprised it came from Cult of Ham?
They say that it wouldn't look like it wouldn't look like a Hatfield McCoy situation. You wouldn't have specific Auburn versus Alabama type war like that. They wouldn't go to. But I think what a lot of people would say is that it would be like that, but on a much bigger scale. It'd basically be like every man against every man. It looked like the Purge. Has anybody seen the Purge?
Yeah. So there's a very good real life counterexample to this.
No,
it's
not good.
Yeah, I don't know about the Purge, but so the idea that if we got rid of a federal government and a state government, everything would just kind of go to chaos, and it'd be Mad Max and all that sort of thing. What is the world government?
Well, right now it looks like it's the Illuminati.
Yeah, what government runs the world?
None of them?
Yeah, so the fact that we are not constantly at war, right? I mean, there's conflicts, there's skirmishes and all that sort of thing, but we are not constantly at world war, right? Nations have a reason to align with one another. Nations have a reason to cooperate.
Well, the Book of Revelation talks about a world government.
Yeah, but we're not gonna rely on that as because most of the people here don't actually believe in that. So it's like, that might as well be quoting a passage from Harry Potter to them and be like, see, the Book of Harry, in the Deathly Hallows, Harry Potter said this, and therefore, I don't think that's gonna quite fly with this crowd.
Yeah,
I was just joking. I was joking actually, but
no.
One's a book of fairy tales, one's a book of fairy tales.
No, I disagree with that completely, but that's a topic for another stream.
Yeah, that's another topic for another day. But
okay.
Yeah.
But the very fact that countries cooperate with one another, even if they disagree and sometimes hate each other, like like, even though Russia right now, like, even though Trump and Putin seem to be best buddies, America and Russia kind of hate each other still. That's pretty. There is, yeah, there's no lack of bad blood between Russians and the United States. I mean,
Putin was a part of the secret police, I think, wasn't he?
yeah, he was a part of the KGB.
That is
Yeah.
a fucking ringtone you made.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was. Yeah. Anyway.
The problem is I have a hard time seeing that kind of ultra, what you'd call no government type America, because the entire, one of the biggest things, the well-known things about America is that it's unique government. The kind of three branches of government. Tiered system, 3 branch of government system, and that it's all supposed to I just don't see any society. I mean, while I do believe that human nature is not completely evil, I also don't believe that it's completely perfect. It's obviously that's a very flawed thing. But the thing is that I don't see how that system. I mean, power always has a kind of reason to accumulate. And if you go down to the kind of system, what would you think of? Okay, you have one community who that one community who's down there. Don't you think that one community would through good terms connect with one other good community, and then another good community would come into that community, and eventually that one community would branch out and become one big giant community that was running under one kind of what you call body. It was pretty much power always has a reason to accumulate.
Well, by that same logic, we should have a world government, and yet we don't. And to my knowledge, we've never had a world government.
Because the world's a lot smaller than it used to be, though. We probably will have a world government in 100 years.
Yeah, that's true.
And Aspie and HUMANE. Here's a little meme for HUMANE.
Yeah, and you were talking about, so power has a tendency to accumulate, and I believe that is, I'm in agreement with you there. But if you listen to if you accept the words of Lord Acton when he said, "Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely," and when you get to government, it's always a concentration of power, and if power corrupts, and I think it does, it's fairly obvious throughout history that the more power somebody gets, the more corrupt they get. Even some of the people who you thought were really good people, as soon as they get a taste of that power, and then it changes people.
That's why all 3 functions of the government are separated in the law, the executive, the one that's carrying out the laws, separated. The ones that creates the laws separated, and the ones who decide on the constitutionality of laws is also separated. And I get that, but wouldn't it be better if instead of 3 branches keeping each other in check, you had 1,000,000 branches keeping each other in check? Because that is even more decentralized power.
I have a question for you, HUMANE. If you want, like for another
but
next week,
this is.
For next week, we talk about whether or not who should have more power, the states or the federal government. Because there's been different people that argue that it should be the federal government have more power than the states, and there's been people on here, I can't remember who exactly, would argue no, it needs to be the states have more power than the federal government. And saying it used to be the states have more power, and then at some point in history, it did a complete about face on that.
Well, that's actually the 10th Amendment of the Bill of Rights, was that states are supposed to have more power than the federal government.
Well, actually, the 10th Amendment was supposed to what we would call responsibilities that aren't directly given to the federal government are given to the state. So basically, power by omission, in a way.
Yeah, it's saying anything else that is not explicitly enumerated in the Constitution is the states and the people. It does not belong to the federal government.
Yeah, and I remember I think the things that were given to the states were things like marriage, infrastructure. What was that other one? Not healthcare. Police powers and dang, I forgot my government already. But all I know is that it's certain things like marriage, infrastructure, policing, and that type of thing. So, what's weird is that all those things are starting to I remember during Ferguson, everybody was saying, oh, we need to centralize the police, and I'm like, no, don't do that. You're just gonna, that's completely antithetical to what you want to do, to what you want.
Yeah, it's like, well, hey, the police are corrupt, so let's make it one big organization, so that way there's no one we can turn to.
Yeah,
well,
the same people who say the police are corrupt are the same people who want the police to be the only ones allowed to have guns.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Yeah, and
oh, that's so cute.
That's a huge problem. That's a huge issue. For instance, back in 2012, I remember when Sandy Hook went down, I think one of the victim's relatives actually wrote to the president at the time, Obama, saying that she wanted all guns banned. I think she made an exception for the military and the police, which if we just there's a certain person in history that disarmed, or at least it's debatable, but according to some, disarmed his citizens, and that was Hitler, or at least that's been the claim by some people, is that fascists disarm their citizens. Like, that's a way to do it.
That's true. Gun control is by every totalitarian regime in history.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so cute. Loudmouth, that is so adorable.
Yeah, I remember getting into an argument with a lady about that.
Here.
Yeah,
that led to the Japanese peasants rising up against the samurai one day.
Yeah, and also something to be pointed out is, I mean, whether people like the ANCAPs, like the usual straw men, is, they want to get rid of the police. You guys want to privatize the police. Now, my issue with abolishing the police is, and I've not been able to get a straight answer from any of these BLM supporters, is there a replacement? Now, I think there's maybe a few cities in the U.S., if I can find it, where they, bless you, where they, let me see, cities without a police force. Because I know there's several nations that have no military, and they're just fine. Okay, so there's some cities, according to the Blaze, if you guys want to see this yourself, I'll message you. Okay, so there's been several cases where the city had to fire their police force due to the economy. Some just quit.
They're probably very tiny places.
Yeah, very small community. Like most towns in the United States, when you're talking about like rural areas, their police force consists of a sheriff and maybe a deputy.
Yeah, Youngstown, Arizona, on December 1st, 2011. They joined the ranks of many of the U.S. cities and towns that have fired. Fucking website's so tucked up, laggy. Trying to find where I was. Okay, they have fired their local police forces. Reports 24/7 Wall Street in recent years. It has become somewhat of a bizarre and unsettling trend across the country for municipalities to disband their police departments, mostly because of financial restrictions. Which, I mean, in that case, it's like, what other option do they have? If they have financial problems, what do you expect?
Yeah, that's.
I think it's not too unreasonable to do so. If you cannot afford to have them, you got to let them go. All right, so this is from the Blaze. If you guys can see the link right there, if you want to read it in full, you can do so. And then there's this one from New York Post. And yeah, some of these are pretty small towns, which I think that's one of the reasons why it works. And this, I'm not saying this is automatically.
Well, there's another argument. It can only work in a case of a town with a very small population. But for a large city, I think a large city requires a police department in order to maintain stability.
Well, I don't think it's required. I think it just often, large cities tend to have crime, at least a lot more rampant crime.
Yeah,
but
and this right here is fake news.
It doesn't make any sense why, okay, this town has 100 people in it, and then that town has 1,000 people in it. Town with 100 people has 0 crime, and the town with 1,000 people has to have more than 0 crime. And it's like, wait.
Yeah, hang
so
on a second.
Isn't 1,000 people just 10 groups of 100? What makes multiplying it by 10 inherently increase crime? That doesn't quite make sense. If small towns can have no crime, what is getting people in a group? Oh, well, there's inherently going to be crime. Why is that? I mean, it seems to be the case, but that it doesn't make sense logically why that would occur.
Human nature.
Because human nature is naturally flawed, and there'll always be at least one person.
Yeah. Okay.
who
So.
want to, yeah.
Okay. So,
One thing,
if one
well,
person
well-
is bad in a group of 100, then when you get a group of 200, there should be 2 bad people, and when you get a group of 300, there should be 3 bad people. At least that's.
Well, between 1 to 4% of the population are psychopaths.
Guys-
Sociopaths.
Okay,
okay.
that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to commit crimes.
Sociopaths.
Here it is. Okay, so an Alaskan city was left without a police force after its entire 4-person, keep in mind, 4-person department quit. Yeah, very small populations with this happening.
Yeah.
So on a larger scale, I don't know if it could work. So when people say we gotta demilitarize, which I get where they come from. I think the only time they should be heavily armed is in cases where it is proven that the situation could turn deadly.
Well,
Yeah.
if you think
I gotta
about
tell you-
cities,
Going, sorry.
oh, I was about to. If you think about cities and why they need police forces, it's usually because of organized crime, right? Not your petty thieves and all that sort of thing. They could use a police force for those sorts of things, but when you're talking about the getting militarized and all of that sort of thing, it tends to be to deal with organized crime, like gangs and mafias and stuff like that. Those types of organizations. But those organizations only exist because they can make money selling drugs and prostitution. If they didn't have that avenue, there goes their strangle. There goes their way to make money. Like you don't make money by beating people up.
Well, in that case, with dealing with organized crime, and in cases where it could be violent crimes, in that case only, I'm fine with the police being heavily armed and in a sense militarized. But in the case of like low-level, non-violent drug offenses, no, you don't need all these. You don't need to be like militarized to have a low-level, non-violent drug bust.
Exactly.
And I mean, I think there was actually, I think there was something, if I can remember. I think it's called, if I can remember, it's called the Posse Comitatus Act, or at least however the fuck you pronounce it. A federal statute prohibiting the use of military and civilian law enforcement. And
Oh yeah,
they did
that's
this- yeah, that's what it is. And I remember finding this when I was doing research on my to make arguments against.
yeah. The only exception to that is supposed to be martial law. Like,
Can
when-
I say something in if that's true, if a police department was to leave, it would probably work like how it works in Alaska. They don't have, a police department that's actually in the towns. They have a police department, like I saw this on like a Wild Alaska, something on National Geographic, where police officers will be sent to like towns occasionally to check up on stuff that might be happening.
Yeah,
Somebody will call something in, and they'll send a cop, like a few police officers out there. Like one thing they constantly do, I saw one episode where all these people were traveling to this one town for a basketball game, and the cops were kept checking people for booze because it's basic. Frankly, in certain places in Alaska, there's certain dry counties where it's illegal to bring alcohol. And I know I don't exactly agree with that, but that you have a whole bunch of these, Inuits, basically smuggling alcohol to these basketball games and so on and so forth. And I actually saw one episode where a bunch of kids, like teenagers or something, snuck into into a school in order to get to the computers, and when the people the school officials finally saw them, they managed to escape. And you know what, they were actually looking at pornography on
Oh wow.
yeah, they snuck into a school house just so they could look at go to Pornhub,
Yeah, they were just look. They would have known about your.
They were just looking at
Police
statistics.
Yeah.
That's probably why the police officers didn't catch them, because when they were running at them, they slipped.
Oh,
All right. Well, there's a point where you guys were talking about like disarming the population and all that sort of thing. So let's kind of go back to that, and then
Yeah,
eventually
let's
we got to
do
get
that.
back on topic of actually taxation. I know this is related to taxation, but so around the time of the Sandy Hook shooting, and this was the time where Pierce Morgan was going on his stupid, every episode was about banning guns and all
His
that sort of thing.
crusade.
Yeah,
against
his
guns.
crusade. So we had an event on base where it was kind of it wasn't an air show per se because our particular little small annex didn't have an airstrip, but it was an event that was open to the public on our base. And so there were military personnel there from security forces, which is the security guards of the base. But we were in PT gear, not the full uniform, but still uniform. And there was a lady who went. So it was kind of like a career fair type deal. I don't remember the exact settings, but there was booths set up for different companies on this this area and whatever. And there was a lady there who wasn't a part of the military, and she went up to the security forces booth and she was looking at the the AR-16. Well, AR-16. Wow. Yeah, I know what I'm talking
go.
about.
I need to work out. I'm gonna go. I need to work out. So
Yeah.
it was nice talking to you guys.
No.
See ya.
Yeah, no, she was looking at the M4s. Wow, AR-16. That sounds stupid.
AR-16.
Holy crap! I did not just say that. So it was the M4 anyway. Yeah, the M4A2.
Saying bye to Aspie a second earlier.
So anyway, so they had that on display because that's the weapon the security forces are carrying around. It's the rifle, the military rifle, and I'm drawing a blank on the name. I keep the only thing I can think of right now is AR-16, which is not correct. Anyway, so they had their gun. What? Sorry, what?
Is it an AR-14?
No, I don't think that is correct either. But I know A2 is the freaking subcategory. Anyway, the security forces had one of those on display. Of course, I mean, it was, on safe. There was no round in the chamber and had a clip out or whatever. And so this lady starts talking about, she's repeating those Pierce Morgan talking points as no private citizen should own a weapon like that. And I'm like, this is one without burst. This is one without, this is just one with fire and safe. This is not this is not an automatic fire. This is not this is semi-auto and safe. Those were the two settings on this. It did not have burst fire, at least because this was the display model. This was not an actual, to my best of my knowledge, this wasn't an actual working gun. Anyway, burst fire is something you cannot have as a private citizen, but you can have in the military or with special permits. Anyway, so the conversation was, oh, no private citizen should have a weapon like that, and I was like, What makes you think that these people are so much more special than a private citizen just because they're wearing a uniform? What did they do? What did they do other than swear an oath and put on a uniform, and now all of a sudden they're bastions of virtue and they're never going to use that gun inappropriately?
Yeah.
What have police officers done? They said that they wanted to be a police officer and they went through training. How does that, that automatically qualifies them? People go through concealed carry permit courses that are more intense than the gun training that military get. It's more intense than a lot of these officer or beat cops in order to get. Like, once you get to the FBI and security forces, obviously there's more intense gun control. But the stuff that I had is nothing compared to a concealed carry course. It was very good training. I learned a lot about guns, although I cannot remember the name of the actual weapon for the life of me. I gotta look that up because it's bugging me.
Yeah.
But
You brought up that I feel like would make interesting streams in the future, arguments against gun control.
Oh,
things
well,
like that.
okay.
As for
So it is the AR-15. Okay, I was off by one number. Okay, now I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, the AR-15. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I knew AR-16 sounded stupid. AR-15, right? It's AR-15A2 is the model. Anyway, That's the current military version. Anyway.
That defense in Air 14, I was like,
Yeah. Okay. Now I don't feel as stupid because I was only off by one number.
what up? I thought you guys were joking though when you were saying that. Air 14, Air 16. I'm just like,
It's like, no, yeah, it's the AR-15. I'm like, that's why. I was like, man, that doesn't. Yeah. Anyway.
So on the
But
topic
but if you think about what makes the military so special, like I was in the military, not much. It's six weeks of basic where you do 1 week of actually shooting a gun.
How long were you in the military in total?
Yeah, I was in the military for 8 years total. The amount of time I had with an actual firearm, granted, my experience is not the usual. My brother is security forces. He gets a lot more interaction with an actual firearm because that's part of his job. But the security forces is less than 1% of the Air Force, and the other 99% of the Air Force goes to their job without a weapon on them. So security forces is actually probably more the exception to the rule. I know the Army, they've got more time with their weapons and all that sort of thing, and they deploy more. And on deployment, I was issued a weapon, and I still didn't take it to work because it was not required. So it was kept in a lockbox the entire time I was on my deployment. So I was given safety gear and all that sort of thing, and they had a weapon issued to me at the base, but it was never like I wasn't going out on details and stuff like that or going down range. So there's like you don't need a weapon. So I mean, I had I don't think I ever had to wear the bulletproof vest either. So that was they just gave me a bunch of gear, that helmet and all that stuff, and I'm like, I'm gonna be sitting in a freight crate for 6 months. Don't need it. Like unless the base is under siege.
Yeah. I guess I would keep it just in case that happens, but I mean.
No. It was not that I didn't need it, as in I was told not to use it, like not to. You keep it in the lockbox the entire time you're here. It was not like the it's not like I was ignoring my stuff. It was that's what they did with it. I mean, so okay. And I say lockbox, it was the armory. So that's the it's like, hey, if you need it, we'll give it to you.
Yeah. So yeah, in the case of taxation being, I at least I think I can usually have in there as to let citizens decide what to spend their tax money on. I have no problem with that. I think it could be. I think it sounds like a much more positive way to go about it. Yeah. I get where you come from on it being theft. I think.
Yeah.
And mugger.
Well, see, it wouldn't be theft if it's something I would pay for willingly. If it's something I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you know what, you made a good case. I think I do need a police force. Oh, you know what? Yeah, you made a very sound argument. I do need firemen to protect my house. My property catches on fire. I don't want to be trying to put it out with a bucket of water and hopefully my neighbors are able to use a hose or something like that. Yeah. I want a fire truck to show up and actually save all my stuff and not at least hopefully try to save my house and my my belongings and make sure nobody in the house actually dies of the fire. That's something I would like to have.
Yeah, I
Yet stuff like a public school system, maybe that's not something I want to have. I don't have kids. It's not something that I think I should be paying for. I think if you're a parent and you've got kids and you want them to get educated, pay for it your own self or educate them yourself.
Yeah, there's also, I guess one could make the argument, which I'm not saying I endorse it, but that if we pay for it, then we could ensure the quality of education. That's at least the arguments I get when I talk to people on the left who say, even if you don't have children,
if we could ensure the quality of education, we wouldn't need to keep giving them more money every year. And yet, if you look at the statistics for how much we give to education, it's never enough.
Yeah, like how much?
What is the sweet spot of how much we need to pay to make sure that the education system works?
I mean, how many? I don't know how many off the top of my head, but how many like per student? I think one guy I listened to, according to him, which I'm taking this with a grain of salt, $14,000 or $15,000 per student, which
Yeah.
I'm just gonna Google it.
Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers, but you can look at the statistics for home schools and for private schools
Yeah. Okay. So
and compare those to public schools. It's night and day. Public school is paying way more and getting way less. That's especially when it comes to homeschool curriculums.
All right, so I found some statistics, but they're from a few years ago. One from Washington Post says U.S. states' education spending averaged about $10,700 per pupil in 2013, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. But that average masked a wide variation, ranging from $6,555 per pupil in Utah to $19,818 in New York.
That is
That
that's insane because I went to a private school and my tuition was $1,200. If I'm not mistaken, it was $1,200 for the entire year.
Yeah, and as for there's several other developed countries that surpassed others. For instance, Switzerland's total spending per student is almost $15,000, while Mexico averages around $3,000 per student in 2010.
Yeah, so that $1,200 was the curriculum, access to a computer. We also had satellite classrooms for some of our high school courses. We're actually taught by professors at Bob Jones University. So these were actual college level courses, and we had a satellite uplink, and so we were watching them it was basically like they were broadcasting on YouTube sort of thing, and they had all of these phone lines connected, and so they would call your desk and they'd ask you a question on the screen, and then they would call your desk, and you got to pick up an answer and all that sort of thing, and that was all included as part of my tuition. And you're like, that's what $1,200 gets you. I didn't have a machine shop. I didn't have like a woodworking class or like a sports team or a football field, but but I definitely got the actual education.
Yeah. Okay, I think I got a more closer number. So total expenditures for public elementary and secondary schools in the United States in the 2013-14 school year amounted to $634 billion, or $12,509 per school student. Public school
Yeah,
student enrolled.
12,000.
Yeah.
That's like 10 times the amount of what it cost my parents to pay for me to go to school.
Yeah, this is from nces.ed.gov, so I think this is a reliable source. So number one, like which state has number one in education? Montana with a 92.8% high school graduate. There's other states that are pretty close to that, but Montana apparently is number one on that.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's like at what point is it enough? Like I don't know. Like
Yeah.
I think that like we spent.
And the point of comparison is to what charter schools are doing, what private schools are doing, and what home schools are doing. So that's and I know, not sure if there's the Ron Paul education program. He's got a homeschool program that's $600 a year. That's extremely cheap. I don't know what's all included in that. I don't know if that's a comprehensive school program, although I believe it is accredited. So, $600 compared to, what is it, $12,000?
The number I got was $12,509 per public school student. Wasn't I don't know. I think you said you're in Washington State, right? Didn't they declare charter schools unconstitutional?
I hope not.
Because I thought I saw something about this a few years ago, that something about charter schools were declared unconstitutional.
Why?
I don't know if you were living in Washington State at the time. Maybe I don't know.
I don't know, but
yeah, on September 9th, 2015, the Washington State Supreme Court became the first state in the nation to decide that taxpayer-funded charter schools are unconstitutional, reasoning that charters are not truly public schools because they aren't governed by elected boards and elected boards not accountable to the voters.
But they're accountable to the parents, aren't they?
Yeah, and the parents.
So that's the thing, is who's got more skin in the game, the parents of the actual kids or some random Joe Blow who's that And that's always how it is when it comes to taxation. And this is something, if you listen to Milton Friedman, this is what who is more likely to make a better choice with what your money goes to, you or someone else? Right?
Probably you in this case.
Yeah,
Well, I would say in almost every case is who's got your interest at. So you can, I guess a better way to phrase this is, who can you trust to have your best interest in mind? Right? Is it more likely that someone you don't know has your best interest in mind? Or is it more likely that you have your own best interest in mind? Like, so the idea behind government is you're like, okay, I'm going to take my money and I'm going to put it in this pool of money and hope that we all vote to something that's going to benefit me. And if it doesn't, oh well, my money went to whatever everybody voted for. And it's like, wouldn't it make more sense for you to keep your own money and it's like, okay, I'm going to spend it on what I think is going to help me the most? That could be your education, it could be blowing it all at the casino. But you are more likely to say, hey, this is what I need more than anything else. But if you take that control out of your hands and give it to the group, the odds are that that's not going to go to something that you want. It's not going to go to something that will actually help you in your life. And you may I don't know how people justify paying taxes. Be like, oh, well, somebody else needed it. Well, odds are that somebody else that needed it, the same thing happened to them. Right? The person who was like, oh, well, I hope they vote this way because that's going to help me out a lot, even though I didn't get to contribute to the, paying the taxes because I make so little money, I kind of need a benefit, and they voted not to do that thing that would have helped me.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to help that person in that situation, you just take your money and you give it to that person directly. You don't put it in a system and vote and hope that it gets there. It's like, to me that's insanity.
Yeah, and
but that's what taxes are.
Yeah, I think like that makes a lot of sense actually. About taxation being theft. I mean, whenever people say this, like automatically you're gonna people on the left who are like, right libertarianism in a nutshell is, we don't want to pay our taxes, and it's I view it as like what are I think you'd have to ask them, what does it go to? Is it truly necessary? Like, I think that should be the question for the pro-taxes side. Is it worth it? And according to the cult of the sandwich, if you say taxation's theft, you're automatically an ANCAP, which I don't think you automatically are. I just think you probably are somewhere maybe around.
Well, I think that is the thinking process that will get you to ANCAP.
Yeah,
that's a starting point. It's a lot easier to accept that taxation is theft, and once you accept that, then you can start understanding, oh, well, maybe these other things I thought were legitimate because I've been told they're legitimate all my life, maybe they're not so legitimate.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few streams I've had in mind where we would talk about like the government and if the decision was at our feet to either improve it or just get rid of it. Like if we chose to improve it, how would we do it? Or if we get rid of it, how do we start the process? There's also if we were to become the president of the U.S., like if one of us became the president, how would you make your America? Or if you were the vice president, and because I know HUMANE, you said you would never accept that type of nomination.
No, the vice president is worthless. I would turn that down.
Yeah, I mean,
it gets you in line if you hope that the president is going to die. I guess if you're like, oh, well, my chances are good that the president's going to die. All right, I'll take the gamble. I'll go vice president, and I've got 4 years to hope that something bad happens to him. That to me. Other than that, the vice president votes to break ties in the House of Representatives.
I googled it to see what
it's
the role of the vice president.
No, it's ties in the Senate, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, to cast a vote in the event of a Senate deadlock.
Yeah.
And to preside over and certify the official vote count of the U.S. Electoral College. That's according to the first thing it says. The only duty the U.S. Constitution assigns the Vice President is to act presiding officer of the Senate, but the Vice President also serves as the ceremonial assistant to the President and is an important part of the President's administration. I mean,
not really. I mean, it's kind of like a. I guess he can kind of go out and do events in the president's stead, but that's about it.
Yeah, and I don't know what the term, what the line is like after the vice president, who like I know there's
it's president, vice president. Is it Secretary of State?
I think I thought.
And then it's Speaker of the House.
I think that's how it goes, but I'd have to double check.
Yeah.
Wonder if there's ever any movement that wants to get rid of the role of vice president. I'm gonna Google that.
I don't know, but I mean, it's not that the vice president isn't important. It's that it doesn't hold any real power to affect change. And if the goal is to affect change, vice president, you'd be better off as a senator or representative or some other, or even maybe even state, or maybe even treasurer if you wanted to enact actual change. Well, actually, no, treasurer is probably anybody in the actual cabinet is still going to have to abide by the president's decision. So they're still kind of more. Yeah, they're kind of bound to act according to what the president wants. So if you get this seems odd and makes absolutely no sense because I don't know why. If we get the return of President Obama, and you were the vice president, and kind of like, this guy is doing everything wrong, but what can you do to stop him? I guess if you were the Secretary of State or the Secretary of Defense, you'd kind of be in the same position. You're like, this guy's doing everything wrong, but what can I do short of assassinating the president and assassinating everybody who's in line above me?
There is a way actually to have Obama become president again. I think.
What?
Well,
okay, he can be the vice president, and then the president dies in office, and he can be president again.
I think that's the only way.
That's the only legal way to have a third term as a president.
Yeah.
Because who did that?
There's and I actually agree with term limits. And I especially agree with it on the president.
Was it Nixon who served 3 or 2.5 terms, or no? Who was
FDR? I think it was FDR.
FDR served 3 legitimate terms.
There was one who was served a 4th, but he died in office. I can't remember his name.
That's Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Yeah, FDR. FDR served 4.
Yeah, 3 full terms, and then he died in his 4th, and his vice president succeeded to the presidency. And he was the only president that ever served a 3rd or 4th term. Every president usually signed off at 2 terms.
Yeah, after that they did the term limits of 2.
Yeah.
So it's still possible to do 3, provided you were the vice president in your first.
Yeah.
Or I mean, I guess it could be your 3rd. Yeah. As long as you were a vice president in one of those.
Yeah, it's also technically possible for the vice president and the president to be married, but they'd have to be elected from different states, I think. Which I thought was pretty damn funny and confusing.
Because that's never happened, no.
Yeah, but it's theoretically.
Because the vice president has always been a man. I don't think we've ever had a vice president that wasn't a dude.
Did you just assume their genders, you fucking bigot? No, I'm kidding.
Oh well, they could get married. Yeah, you're right. Now that that's legal.
Yeah, there's never
it wasn't legal previously, but yeah.
Yeah. There's also there's several things that have never been there's several things that have never happened. Like, we've never elected a female president or vice president, which I don't think is a big deal.
Yeah.
We've never had an openly atheist president, but we've had a few that are suspected atheists,
yeah.
At least because of how irreligious they were. But I mean, that just means you're not all that outspoken about your faith. We've never elected a Jewish or Muslim president, which I can imagine people just flooding the White House with Allahu Akbar letters.
Okay. Yeah. So 2020, we could have our first Shapiro president.
I don't know if you like the guy. I mean,
Where
he's
you
a,
go from there?
Yeah, I think I would. Well, it depends. Is Ben and Trump going up against each other? Because if it's Ben versus Trump, I think I would vote Trump again. If
Wait,
it's Ben
versus Trump.
and Trump is not seeking a second term, I think.
Oh yeah, he said he's within hours of assuming the presidency.
Yeah, he would say he would seek a second term. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna see about the
Yeah,
Republican.
I like
Wait, you were
Shapiro a
voting for
lot,
Ben.
but
Oh.
I don't think he
okay.
could do what Trump is doing.
There's this guy. He's probably the oldest person seeking the presidency for the Republican Party. He's like 80. He's like pushing 90 at this point. His name is Jack Feller, born in 1931. Which, Donald Trump is currently the oldest president who was elected at the time. He was 70, so he's like the oldest to be elected. Ronald Reagan was previously the oldest. So if this guy gets elected in 2021. He'll be 90 years old.
That's not gonna happen.
Yeah, but I'm just saying if, but I doubt it.
Well, I think
Trump
is gonna be a 2-term president. I think that.
I mean, with some of his how his presidency's gone down, I thought he was gonna be 2-term the moment he was inaugurated, but with he has the lowest approval rating for any president within the first year of his term. He has I think it was around 60 or 65+% disapproval rating at this point in time, and I'm gonna see.
Doesn't quite make sense. I wonder where is that approval rating coming from? Is that something like Is that like a CNN poll, or is that coming from news organizations, or is that like a Pew study, where they actually poll, people around the country? Because I think most of those that I've seen so far as the president's approval ratings have been from mainstream media that spend their entire coverage bashing Trump and trying to convince people that he's in collusion with Russia doing something illegal or nefarious. I don't know if you guys watched the 16-hour Crowder stream.
No, I didn't.
So
No.
I don't know how he did it, because I had to take breaks in between. I'm like, dude, I can't keep. No, this is you have to pause every few minutes and then come back, and it's like 16 hours and 15 minutes of content, and 90% of it was anti-Trump for over the Russia nonsense, and you're just like, ugh.
Is he anti-Trump or pro-Trump?
Crowder is pro-Trump, but he spent 16 hours watching CNN coverage.
Oh.
So
basically,
that was his Christmas torture stream, because the previous year he got waterboarded as part of his marathon, Christmas marathon thing, and so he had a bunch of guests come on, and and he interviewed a bunch of people, and it was so there was that in between, but the entire focus of it was that he was watching the entire day's broadcast from CNN for that day.
Yeah. All right. So for the 2020 election, the Democratic Party, John Delaney is running for that. Libertarian Party, which I think I might vote Libertarian in this election. Adam Kokesh.
Yep. So Adam Kokesh, he might steal it for me.
Jill Stein is suspected for the Green Party, and then the rest I don't know about. They're independent, and there's no way in fuck I'm voting for Kanye West. I would rather vote for Kanye.
Maybe just for the laughs. So hey, everything's going to hell, might as well, right?
Yeah, alright. Okay, I'm gonna Pew Research Centers. I'm trying to find it.
No, but yeah. Prior to Trump, when Adam Kokesh said he was gonna run in 2020, I was like, okay, that guy's got my vote. Now that Trump's there, I don't know. I'll have to double check things on their actual. Because if we're talking,
Are you like a registered Republican or a registered?
I am registered Libertarian, but I voted Republican because there's nothing that says you have to vote according to what you're registered.
Yeah, that's true. Because like I get where a lot of libertarians come from with Gary Johnson's issue with private property rights, especially considering forcing businesses. It's like, no, you're not entitled to anybody's services. I don't care what group you're from. You're not entitled to it.
Yeah, I don't think Kokesh has a chance of winning, but Kokesh is an actual ANCAP, so
yeah, he believes he believes
yeah.
tax.
He was one of the people who kind of changed my thought process on all of this. He was one of those people that was one of the first channels I started listening to and watching. Kind of dropped off after he went to jail for a little while over trumped up charges of. So what had happened was he protested by carrying a loaded firearm through Washington D.C. where firearms are banned.
Doesn't that violate the Second Amendment to ban firearms in D.C.?
It should violate it, and that was the reason for the protest. He did not aim it at anybody. It was just loaded, and he carried it openly. He carried it in the correct, it wasn't pointing at anybody. It was, he didn't have his finger on the trigger. It was all, entirely gun controlled for the entire stream. Nothing happened. He smoked a marijuana cigarette in front of the White House. Nothing happened. He made a podcast where he was talking about taxes and how we have an obligation to not pay taxes, and gave a pretty inspiring speech about it. Within a week, the SWAT team raided his house and pointed loaded weapons at him and his friends and family that were staying at that house.
Yeah.
That's why, and the reason that they said they did it was because he open carried in public, and I was like, that was like almost a month after that. Almost a month after his protest, where I believe he had a permit. No, scratch that. He did not have a permit. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right,
so a month later, they invade his house with a SWAT team. And I'm like, why was that not something that happened immediately? It was only after he made a podcast where he's talking about taxes. And even to this day, he says that the raid was over the gun thing. And I'm like, dude, were you even... Like, I don't know if he's catching on. I'm like, you just threatened their revenue stream. That's where they're like, oh wait, maybe we need to notice this guy. Like that taxes are their bread and butter. Of course they're gonna come after you after that, and they're gonna blame it on this gun charge or the marijuana thing and DC.
Yeah. All right. So this is where so polling. This is
okay. So where are those from?
I'm currently on the...
No, I guess that's from the Wikipedia, but where does the Wikipedia say that source of that graph is from?
Gallup, apparently. I'm not too familiar with it.
Okay, that's... So Gallup polls, okay.
Yeah. Others, let's see. Then it goes to individual state. South Carolina.
Okay. So maybe there's a little more credibility than I originally thought.
Southern states they mostly approve.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, there's a few that mostly disapprove, and then there's some that are kind of tied. I'm trying to find my state because I want to know what my state's stance is on it. Because I think my state, I think they mostly voted for Trump, but others voted for Gary Johnson.
Wait, what does Florida say?
Oh wait, Florida. Where's Florida?
That was right there. Oh, yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah, actually, next week's stream we should talk about voter ID.
And about the electoral college, because
me and Loudmouth kind of got into a little bit of that on Twitter, but but yeah, I think voter ID should be a decent topic for next week, and I sent my brother the link, and he's supposed to be able to show up this Thursday, but
yeah, all right. Several states.
He should have been here by now.
California, imagine my shock, mostly disapproves.
Yeah. Imagine my shock. That's probably a terrible Paul just watching. Whatever. Imagine my shock.
Disapproves. North Carolina mostly disapproves. Maryland mostly disapproves. California, though, I think I can agree with people as I say this. It's a liberal hellhole, you know.
Yeah, that was just one of the things I noticed when I was looking at the charts for the polls for the most recent election. There are less than 10 states where it was within 5 percentage points. That means like 40 or more of the states, they were showing like, the difference between Trump and Clinton was like 20% of the votes. It was like ridiculous ranges.
Florida mostly disapproves. They're like,
yeah,
and disapprove, 37% approve, and then
yeah. So when you're looking at like all these
talk, because it's kind of, I'm kind of curious now. I'm like, where do they stand on it? Because I mean, like with, I don't know. My state is pretty red, so
yeah.
I don't know about Lucifer's state because I don't know about every state, but I think your state, HUMANe, is pretty
Florida.
blue, isn't it?
Yeah. Washington is blue. If you look at the actual breakdown, the majority of the state is red, and then Seattle is like dark blue, and Seattle makes the entire state blue.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like a couple blue dots here and there, whatever, but it's like most of the state is red, and then there's just one huge chunk of blue in the middle, and then the entire state's blue. And you're like, yeah, okay. So I know my vote doesn't matter, so I may throw my vote away on Adam Kokesh just to give him more votes, but
we got the red meat Republicans, the blue popsicle Democrats, the lemon yellow Republican, what the fuck?
Libertarians.
The yellow lemon Libertarians.
Lemony fresh.
And the green apple Green Party, which your boy Colta Ham voted for Jill Stein, and he said he'd vote for her again, even though he initially supported Bernie Sanders.
Ew.
Yeah, well, at least he didn't go from Bernie Sanders to Hillary.
He says his policy is to vote when it comes to voting. A person cannot be Hillary Clinton, and they cannot be a Republican. He strongly does not like Republicans. He used to be a Christian conservative Republican, then he abandoned that, went to left libertarianism. He's an atheist and anti-theist, which is not surprising. And yeah, which doesn't surprise me about at all. I mean, I will admit I did kind of look at Bernie Sanders like, he's all right. Initially I did support Clinton, but then I'm like,
I would have much rather seen a Bernie Sanders versus Trump race, but
then I was like, Bernie sounds like he's all right. But then I would look at the information, and I'm like, oh, he's a socialist. I don't want to.
No, he's a democratic socialist because there's a difference.
Which to me, it's like I don't care how big the difference is. It's like
no, there isn't a difference.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. Saying something is democratic does not make it better. It's
like if you're saying I'm a democratic Nazi. It's like
we voted Hitler was voted into office in a democratic process.
Yeah.
And Nazi Socialist Party. So that was democratic socialism. Okay.
So was Republican.
Yeah. So I think the libertarians like to take the Republican fiscal conservatism and the Democrats social liberalism, or at least that's how people try and chalk it up. But
yeah, it's. I mean, that's kind of how they brand it, but really, it's the underlying principles behind it are more consistent than either party.
Yeah, and I think the Libertarian Party I think they care more about gay rights than the Democrats do because
Oh yeah,
from the from when the party at least the U.S. Libertarian Party, when they were born in 1972, they cared about it before the Democrats officially did in 2012, or at least
yeah.
I think that's when they started making it really public.
Democrats only care about things that get them into office. As soon as it stops getting them into office, they
Yeah. Essentially, I wonder what's going to be next after they drop
So-
the LGBT thing.
This is why you'll see Democrats appeal to black voters and things that
And look at the state of the cities that
Yeah.
vote for them.
yeah, and after they get into office, after making all these promises that are going to help these poor black communities, and then they do everything they possibly can to destroy those same communities and make them worse. And you're like,
Yeah.
you made all these promises because you cared about them at election time, and then you stopped caring about them for the other 3 or 4 years or whatever, depending on which office they're in.
Yeah. If you were a quick question, have you ever met a U.S. president while in the military? Like, have you ever seen one?
No. The highest I got to shake the hand of the Secretary of Defense, so Leon Panetta.
Ah.
So that was when I was deployed in Djibouti, Africa. There was, let's see, 150 to 200 of us at the base who got to meet him in person and shake his hand, and we all got a Secretary of Defense coin.
Ah.
So I don't know if you know what. Yeah. So,
Yeah. If you ever had the chance to meet the president, like let's say if you had the opportunity, because I don't know when you were in the military. For instance, the colonel in my ROTC, I think it was around the time Obama became president. So it was around when Bush and Obama were presidents, respectively. I think he may have been within the same area, but he never did get to actually meet the president in person. But if I had the chance to meet the president, like the current one, I'd have no problem with it. Like, I might disagree with him on certain things, but I mean, hell, it's like probably a once in a lifetime opportunity. You meet the president or the leader of any nation. Only one I would refuse is Kim Jong-un. That one I would not want to meet.
Yeah, because you're more likely to die if you meet him. That's it's like if you're meeting him, it probably means things are not going well for you.
Yeah.
No, but if Obama had come, because Obama did visit military bases and all that sort of thing. If he had shown up, I would have shown respect, because that's what you're supposed to do. It's not. It's a respect for the office. I disagree with the man. I was very openly against his administration, but you meet him in person. It's not like I'm gonna be like, "Oh, dude, you suck." No, that was. Well, not only is that against military code of justice, but so there's legal ramifications for doing that sort of thing. But
yeah, the colonel in my class, he said he didn't like the fact of what Obama was doing in the military, but he said that the people voted him in, and he's be behind the president the entire time, and
commander in chief.
Yeah, he said around the time of the election, he said, "Look, I voted third party." He said, "I didn't like either one of them. However, if no matter who it is, we will show them respect." And I said, "All right, that's fine."
And
I practiced the entire time because we get quizzed. Who is the commander in chief, or who is the president of the United States? They use either phrase, and I would make it a habit. Sir, or ma'am, the answer to your question is the Honorable Donald Trump or the Honorable Hillary Clinton, or hell, even third-party candidates, because I didn't know. I would remember and make it a habit. And I remember waking up that morning and I Googled who won, and my sides left the building when I saw the results, because I knew either way I was going to be swimming in salty tears for the next 2 years. And boy, was I not wrong. I slept like a baby that night with how good of a swim I had through those salty tears.
Yeah, I can't believe I can't believe he won. And I was looking at we're talking about the electoral college and all that sort of things. It was so freaking close.
I think she had 65 million and he had 62.
No, but if you look at the states, the swing states, and how much he won by, let's see. I broke this down on Twitter. It was Wisconsin, or no. Let me pull up the charts. That way I'm not misquoting. But so the way it worked out. Let's see. Let me pull this up. Okay, so this is the source I'm using. I'll link it in Hangouts.
Alright.
And let's see, which page did I bring this up on the right?
That's
Hey,
free.
that's bad.
What's up?
Do you see that Netflix video that people are pissed off about?
No, I have not. So,
I
Alright.
sent you a link to it.
So-
Like, people are pissed about this.
how pissed are we?
That, yeah, that is the chart I'm looking at here. So looking at the swings. Oh,
The so-called skeptic community made some videos about it.
They're not
Yeah.
skeptics.
okay. So Wisconsin, which is 10 electoral votes, Trump won by 0.7% of the votes. Iowa, which is Iowa wasn't a big one. No, okay, so it's Wisconsin, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, right? No,
Yeah,
those are the three that I was looking at.
Democrat.
Oh no. Okay, here's the three that I was looking at. So Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So Trump won Wisconsin by 0.7% of the vote, Michigan by 0.3% of the vote, and Pennsylvania by 0.7% of the vote.
Yeah, in Pennsylvania,
Those-
at least, from my understanding, they normally they don't vote Republican, but
Yeah.
they went bright red that time around the election.
Yeah. So had he lost Pennsylvania, so that would have dropped him down to 280, and it would have brought Hillary up to 252. Had he lost Michigan, that's a 0.3% win. That would have given Hillary 268, and he would have been down to I can't do maths. So that would have been 36. He would have been at 370. Had he lost Wisconsin, that would have put her above him. Those three states won Trump the presidency. And those three states, he won by less than 1% of the vote. That's it's 0.7%, 0.7%, and 0.3%. If you add those up together, that's 1.7% of the votes between those three states decided the election.
Yeah, it's been alleged
That's
that there was 3 million votes on Hillary's behalf that were of illegal immigrants. So there's people that claim that he won it absolutely fair and square, which I'd have to look into it to verify. But if that's true, then
yeah. Well, if that's true, the margins of him winning would have been much bigger, right? Instead of it being 0.3%, it would have been something closer to like 2.3%. So it would have been a much larger gap between barely squeaking by a victory. I mean, still looking at it's still considered a landslide. Because if you look at the actual numbers, it's 306 versus the 230. That seems huge. But, you know, what is Pennsylvania is 20, Wisconsin is 16. 46 electoral votes could have swung the election either way, and that's 3 states. That's not. Yeah, it's.
yeah,
That is pretty bizarre. Yeah, if you like, this is something we'll have to look into next week, because maybe we're going too far into it this week, because we're supposed to be talking mostly on taxes, but that's.
yeah. But I think the position is more logical of
Yeah.
being theft.
If there is voter fraud of 3 million, that is so 3 million fraud. With that's 1% of the population, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So if there's 1% voter fraud, which sounds like, oh, that should be insignificant, 1% of voter fraud almost won the election for Hillary.
Yeah. And can you imagine if that was found out now? Let's say it was her.
But if it had been slightly different, if it hadn't been Hillary Clinton versus Trump, if it had been Hillary Clinton versus, you know, Kasich or something like that, then Hillary Clinton would have won easy, and the voter fraud would have helped, you know, put her over the top. If it had been Donald Trump versus Bernie Sanders, maybe, you know, Trump wouldn't have won.
Yeah.
Maybe Bernie Sanders would have gotten more of the votes. I don't know. That
Yeah.
3 million voter fraud could have just tipped it in his favor. Because what that means, because I mean, this is an assumption on our part, but seems pretty obvious when you look at who's against voter fraud. It's Democrats, and who is for voter ID, or sorry, voter ID, not voter fraud. Who is for voter ID? It's Republicans. Who is against voter ID? It's all the Democrats. And you're like,
Well,
why would they be? And then when you're so when you talk about illegal votes and all that sort of thing, I'm not 3 million voter frauds is what's presumed. I'm pretty sure none of them voted for Trump. That's
yeah, and
I don't have any proof of that, or
I have a few theories as to what else gave him the victory, but I think it's mostly kind of the swing states, but more the how people went about saying vote for this person. I think that had somewhat of a role in it, but I won't say it was like, oh, if that didn't happen, you guys would have won. You guys would have won right off the bat. But
yeah, so if there was no voter fraud, he would have run more soundly, and maybe there wouldn't be all this division, because people are like, oh, well, yeah, he you know, Hillary Clinton didn't stand a chance. But now it's like, oh, it's so close, it means the nation is widely divided. Maybe that division wouldn't seem so big if the polls were different, because like Obama won by 8% or something like that.
Yeah.
But if you look at previous presidents, this is and again, this is stuff we'll get into next week. Maybe I shouldn't get into, because
this is where we'll wrap up.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, previous Republican presidents won by 18% and 15%.
I think HW won in a landslide.
Yeah, huge percentages. Not 1 or 2%. It wasn't, they weren't within 2% of each other. It was 20%.
I think it was Reagan instead. I didn't mean to say HW, but I think it was more Reagan. I think he won by a landslide. But yeah, we'll get into this next week. But it was good chatting with you guys.
Okay, yeah. So we'll talk about voter fraud and.
Yeah. All right. So you can wrap up your. I'll wrap up my stream, and you can then wrap up yours. So as always, Son Lucifer likes trannies. Till next time.
Yay!
You need some new material, man. Likes trannies. All right. I'm gonna.
You guys always give me that source material. I think I'll say Aspie likes the statistics next week if he joins us and if he stays the whole time.
Aspie was just looking at statistics. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end my stream. Wow, 2 hours, man. I gotta figure out how to get back to under an hour and a half.
Oh wow, mine was.
All right.
I need to go to my.
Catch you guys later. I didn't see anybody in the chat.
Yeah,
so maybe this is a dead.
It's 18 seconds.
All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna know, but it was good chatting with you guys.
Yep.
And
Talk to you later.
Oh wait.
Bye.
Wait, dude. That's man.
What's up?